The Eyes of Fear, the Head of Pain, the Face of Evil, and Some King, by Johann Liberto. Chapter 1. The Death of Death. The traveler treaded with fierce steps, declaring the area unsafe. Feeling slim weight and a swaying pistol, the road was spat on by a geezer, clearing throat. All black from shoulders to soles. Black trench coat covered him, leaving a snowy unbuttoned collar apparent. The man's white wavy hair danced on his shoulders, while a thick and white mustache rested beneath his rounded nose, curving to his bottom lips. Blank, the empty look he gave had a hymn that beat loud as a drum. It was best not to cross such a man alone this beseeching night. Dusk shinned on a wooden circular town, riddled with closed shops, homes, and guards safe from invaders. Coming through the pathway to Oakwheel, a stranger plodded onward. Fortunately for him, folks were sleeping, guards were drinking, and the old stone trail was clear of uncertainty. Although lax, the guards were somewhat weary of the dangers in the coming dark, the dangers of the white lights that would peek out in the forest encircling Oakwheel. They glowed just before midnight, and those who would see them knew not to go out of town. Unafraid of the light, lying beaten and bruised, having been tossed beside the wooden walls with the worms and ants, viewing the bare wilderness, seeing the pasture, calmed a young boy. Melodies ascended from a mere child's words to an aspiring musician, holding a psaltery, stringed, reedy instrument atop his chest while flat on ground, itching chords, singing in a fragile voice, "Dream release me, nightmare cease, depart and proceed so mirrors may break, shatter, and decease. Make wonders cease tonight." Uttering the melody, he hesitated. The boy was then joined by patrolling guards, hearing their conversation from a porch's distance, enshrouded by grass. "Heathens dare to tell us how to do things." "Yeah, who needs their rules?" Patrolmen stood outside the town's boundary, hastily drinking before their captain arrived. They protected the settlement perched on the flat grasslands extending to the reaches of the realm. Weather seemed pleasant, a few short gusts here and there, but the grouping clouds began to confess another story. What's more irritating, Endrick drinking our spirit or the heathens? Brows lifted, he copied the expression of hilarity on his brother-in-arms. At once they shouted, "Both!" Laughter, deplorable at best, went full circle to the brim of their pointy helmets, shaking them with glee. Ringmail bound, swords sheathed, they were stationed swallowing spirit. They weren't fat, but well-built for guardsmen. Little training of the sword, however, for before the one with the scruff beard was a farmer, the man with the long-boned face, a shepherd. Either they themselves would take up the sword, or the town would have fewer people at watch. Stumbling over his boots to the front gates, trying to keep a straight face, Captain Endrick said in a slurred, encouraging way, "Ha-ha! Well agreed!" Arched over, keeping his hands to his side, one laid upon his sword, the other a drink. An underdeveloped beard fastened to his brown frizzy mop of hair, blocking his dark, pink, circled gaze. Foreboding shoulders, a steep belly burst from his tuckered brown pants legs. Garbling the spirit, Endrick asked, "What are we talking about?" Boldly, the farmer guard said, "The heretics, Captain." "That so? Because heretics only offered us a cure for the cursed plague, opened up schools around the world to see them slandered behind their backs." Seeming alone in that statement, the lower rank pondered of what the heathens truly wanted. Lashing his arms around their necks, "Come now, just because they don't believe in God doesn't mean they're evil. Evil, if they are, would crop up eventually. Besides, from what I've seen, we couldn't do anything. Not now, anyway." Endrick felt honesty towards the pilgrims that were teaching the people new and glorious things. The tales that went from one end of the countryside to here were angelic. The folk saved, the children cared for. Hope and shock were here to stay. Medicine that could cure any ailment, offered with no expense, was more than he or anyone could ask for. Illness festered the land far enough. Unbeknownst to the inner guards, a peculiar visitor was leaving. The stranger's looks intrigued the captain, getting his disorderly attention. "Stranger." Stopping in his stride, the pale stranger gave the captain time to sniffle and continue his speech. "Don't venture east. The scale-cloaked man resides there." Having delivered his message of warning as they were instructed to do, The stranger passed the intoxicated sentries and still departed to the eastern road, pushing the gauntlet in his mouth. Maniacs, all of them. All. What strange clothes, said the shepherd. Armed bandits camped round there, said the farmer. Leftward, Endrick noticed a child's attendance. Undermining his hold on the guards, he protruded his belly to the left, seeing a boy, shrouded in grass, hiding his adolescence. Blonde, iridescent hair took in the waxing stars, while his grey eyes ran with wolves. The simple bronze tunic he wore was of a peasant. This sight was all too familiar to the captain. Sipping, Endrick said, "We'll see what those heretics can do for you, Ira, you and all the children here." A vagabond was sent to scout the scale cloak man. Freshly tangled burnt corpses hanged and rotated. The trees suspended them high. Bloodgrass formed around them, licking liters of blood flowing down the oak trees. Vast grass plains stretched miles to the mountains of the east. While following the old road, the vagabond found a ramshackle inn. It was isolated from any nearby civilization. Raindrops plummeted, moistening his noggin. It was starting to rain. Sturdy hardwood voiced that this structure was sound and capable of being a resting point. Having keen senses, he scanned for indications of life. Broken glass was jumbled on the muddy ground. 2 windows had a view of the stone pathway up the hills to Oakwheel. One on the left upper floor and one downstairs to the right. This clogged watering hole had experienced many battles in its prime. Startled spiders and termites scattered, then burrowed in the wooden foundation. The container of liquid strapped to his pelvis provided little in ailing his exhaustion. Icy water touched down his lips and dripped from his moustache. Clouds merged, blocking the remaining sunlight from reaching inside. Slowly he looked for a lantern, before night engulfed the dreary place. Oil had a heavy presence in the air. The smell drew the man to a dining table. It was small, a 4-seater table. Only one lantern was present. Getting out a match, he ignited the lantern and observed his surroundings. Mold growing, spreading calamity within its growth, saturated the oak. Ruined painted frames swung against the staircase. Rats hid in hovels, scurrying inside the interior to the lower level. Dust met with smut, scheming to conquer this room with filth. Cobwebs throughout. The place seemed bigger on the outside, but in it was quite cozy. The only furniture operable is the 4-seater and the counter a few feet from it. The serving counter attached to the wall went long to the left in front of the door, by the staircase. Nothing behind it but a cellar, locked and bolted. Beside the table, which sat in between the door and counter, and to the right, a crumbling brick chimney. The logs inside were rotten. The celling and bare room had plenty open space for 4, but no more. Odd for an inn. The frames against the staircase had rips and ripples to them, undistinguishable to what they once were. Patient, he sat on a filthy chair and relaxed. Wind came knocking over rusted cups, tossing them beside his leathery boots. Nodding off hours dwindled. During midnight, company arrived. Clattering hooves striking against the road could be heard. One horse rider. A haughty mien crept along his wrinkled face, full of disinterest and contempt. As the gallop faded, brash, detestable coughs were approaching. He exhaled at the lantern's core. A lofty figure opened the door. Crod? Crod, unsurprised by the arrival of the unwelcomed guest, didn't acknowledge the question. Relighting the lantern, Crowd saw a 20-or-so boy standing tall, fit, and ripped. Dressed for the occasion, lace boots were snakeskin, his red tailcoat concealed the florid double-breasted vest, proudly showing off a silver pocket watch, white shirt, and puffed tie. Armed with honed nails, he grazed the door in anger. Scarred, the tailcoat's left face was ghoulish, morbid, and eerie. It was ripped of humanity. Wind blew, drawn-out scarlet hair swung back from the tailcoat's forehead. The 2 paused at another, then a hand rose, gesturing a seat. 2 awaited the scale-cloaked man's arrival. The continuing silence got awkward. However, sitting hours on end didn't seem something that Crowd prepared to do with company at his doorstep. "Who are you?" Crossing his legs, he responded in a coarse voice. "You've forgotten me! Me, of all people!" Pounding the table. "Jasper, it's Jasper!" Jasper began to scratch the table. Crod felt no need, none at all, not a single want or desire. His eyes sought through him, not giving a damn for anything going on now. He stared not at Jasper, but at the past, not listening nor having interest in the conversation. The table was scrapped by a beast in rage. Anxious Jasper walked about the room studying it. He walked upstairs and ventured more in test, until he found the locked cellar, feeling something there. Slash, the lock broke. He walked into more darkness. He felt eyes upon him, the same ones outside that were watching him on his way here. Bump, he tripped to the ground, landing on piles of rats. Bolstered up, he regained composure and kicked and stomped on them. It was then he felt a tugging. The apparition stopped, and the feeling of eyes stopped. He went upstairs and met with Crod again. There was yelling, but Crod in his side only saw a blur. His ears popped just from trying to understand just what it was this young man was going on about. He kicked his chair to get attention. "Get up! Stand!" He did not, and so Jasper attempted to leave, but in an instant he was sitting on the chair facing Crod. Getting up, he attempted to run to the door. He was sitting in the chair once more. And again, the more he tried to escape, the faster the wait ended for the cloaked man to arrive. Still at last Jasper gave in to demand and waited. At midnight, finally someone had arrived. Crod's revolver was drawn from his holster. It was lengthy, heavy, 5-squared barrel, custom-made, fitting his gloved hands. Oozing its way out, Jasper's tongue salivated, dripping on the table. Excited, Jasper's shoes began tapping. "When he sees my horse, he'll know we're here." Getting up, walking to the door, Crod anticipated the adversary. Smoke began to enter cracks, filling the inn. Crod pointed his gun at the ceiling, giving no recoil, shooting, emptying the barrel. Jasper got on the table and soared through the cracked ceiling. Debris fell, nearly hitting Crod, but he didn't move. Shoving the door, breaking its hinges, Crod observed their interaction. Steam raveled in the air around the scaled cloaked man. The pigment of his torn and weathered cloak was inky. Gusts revealed the weapon hidden in the mist. Craters edged in the protracted club were emitting smog, concealing the shy guest. A full moon beckoned, hovering above. Whilst dashing on the roof, rain hissed on the scaled cloaked man. Evaporating by the contact from the club made Jasper stop in pursuit. Crod's bullets flew, scraping the cape, but he was unfazed. In the distance, Crod studied the air, seeing that their foe was constantly heaving. Crod climbed, took hold of the chimney, and hoisted on opened holes on the walls to the rooftop. Jasperin left himself venerable. The scale-cloaked man hurled the club, lunging. When the club lowered, Jasper poised motionless to the coming onslaught. Crod went forth, blocking his attack, fending the waves of slashes, veering them using his arms as shields. Crod grabbed hold of the heated club. His glove began to smolder. Caught unprepared by overwhelming might, presented a chance to clutch the cloaked man's throat. Displeased gurgles were coming from the cloaked man. The grip was intense enough to break at any second. "Stop! Stop! Stop!" Letting go, the cloaked man slid off the rooftop to the ground. Crod gave some thought to his strength, seeming a bit curious. Jasper hopped down and uncovered the man's disguise. "No one I know." Having satisfied his curiosity, Jasper tied the man, wanting to set out to find answers to why this incident occurred. After bounding the so-called scaled man, Jasper threw him upon his stallion. Before mounting his steed, he took out a vial. It contained blood from which he rinsed his scarlet mane. Combing out tiny pieces of clotted vital fluid further stained his tailcoat. Hunger for gore is what Jasper infatuates about. Ichor is his drinking water, his liquid of choice, the very thing he bathes in. Charging the chambers with powder, "Don't get involved. Leave him here with me." Jasper groomed his styled mane. "I never thought I'd see you again," eyes opened wide, smiling. "And this is how we reunite? It's too late, I'm already involved." Whipping his horse, Jasper went off trail. Crod was tempted to wave bitter, sweet goodbyes, but he knew he wouldn't receive any in return. The attention was long overdue for Jasper. It wasn't at all appreciated. Although they didn't care for each other's company, Crod felt something when he saw him. In the dying luster light of moon they parted. It was only a few miles to town, then he can rest. The need to wear gloves was gone, so he tucked them in his trousers. The vagabond had grown weary of hiking, so his thoughts began to wander. Thus, attention was fixed to a stain stretching across the end of his trench coat. The sweet goodbye he had in mind, perhaps. Highwaymen provided a distraction from this treachery. Equipped bows and sharp bastard swords, they strolled in his direction. Whistles signaling that he'd been spotted wobbled the highwaymen surrounding him. Torches crackled in the breeze. Couple horses held the road bandits. Their plated armor was branded with the faded crest of a moray eel, the kingdom's symbol. Most likely they were the remnants of the Empire's military, shunned for rejecting the new laws the courts made. If you have weapons, drop them aside. There their leader was, full armor, sitting phlegmatic and gratified. Crod played along, conjuring a persona, stuttering in addition to appearing feeble. "No weapons here," limbs raised, reassured the bandits. Good, good, now give us all you have," said the leader. The act had fallen. "All I have?" He shrugged. "Yes, it may sway us from killing you." Comforting demeanor perplexed them, especially when Crod said, "Sure." "Strip him! Do it quickly, we need to send tribute by tomorrow." One of the bandits marched and patted him down. The bandit thoroughly checked. "Pretty stupid to come to the Eastern Road. What brought you here?" Hands moved down Crod's ribcage, then the bandit found a mysterious item strapped to his hips. The object was over a foot, projecting a metal rod. It wasn't a normal thing to come across, and it certainly got the others interested, even from afar in the dark. Catching the woman, Crowd squeezed her wrist. Pulling her in closer, he dislocated her arm. Latching on her cranium, the forced grip pulled her in, close enough to tilt weirdly and break the neck. Bows were already aimed. Arrows pierced through the unruffled air. Crowd didn't dodge the coming arrows, taking one in the thigh, continuing on as if it weren't there. Then his revolver had arisen, heeding certain doom. Curing the barrel in each shot, 5 bullets logged themselves into the skulls of the forlorn lackeys. Bodies descended. Horses fled, bled, paving the road with the dead. The bandit leader was bewildered, having been jerked off his fleeing horse. "What happened?" "Oh, you should have aimed higher," looking around. "It's dark, and I suppose that's the reason why." Dissatisfied, I suppose. Pulsating, the bandit's heart thumbed on. Crowd withheld taking the man's life, for this was someone expressing terror. While reloading the gun, the man shouted, "What are you talking about?" The highwayman was hushed, holding up his gun. "We forgive you." "You're crazy, don't come any closer." He cowered below Crod. Yanking out the arrow from his thigh, Crod's brown eyes peered, giving a serious ferocity on the face, but a clam tone as he spoke. "Run and die, stay and I'll take your eyes." His core pounded faster and faster. Answering was nearing to an end. Crod shoved the tip of the arrow at the man's dreading face. "I want to live, please, please don't kill me." The vagabond pointed the tip, aligning it to the socket. He clenched his hair not to give too much recoil. Once giving in to despair, the shaken man felt the first thrust, gouging his right eye. Twisting and curling commenced. Blotches of blood went forth to the road, staining Crod's hands. The screaming resonated in the rise of the sun. Tightly, Crod held the man by his hair and went to have the left eye. First light separated the two. Dazed, the highwayman curled, covering his empty sockets with his armored hands, whimpering. The coming horizon warmed Crod's clammy skin. Sweat wet his snowy waved hair. Miles more he walked, till he was back to town, standing before the front gates. Endrick drank heavily, smashing empty bottles of spirit while meandering in the watchtower, muttering his wife's name. "Dahlia! Dahlia!" he called out. Spotting the stranger coming up from yesterday, he praised him aloud. "You madman, you actually made it back alive!" Rushing down the watchtower stairway, he ordered the gates be opened. "Open the gate!" yelled a guard. Gates rose. Crod was greeted at the gate by the reveling captain, jiggling in chainmail. "You came back alive? I was sure you would have hanged." Endrick saw the clothes Crod wore, stepped back, giving space. "I strangled the cloaked man and slaughtered the bandits east of here." "Most bold, do you have proof of this?" In an uncaring way, he answered, "Just an eyeball." He put his left hand in his pocket and began to play with it, too drunk to know what he meant. "I suppose returning alive would assure storytellers, but you better bring back something off the body. It's more proof than you'll ever need. So, enjoy your stay." With that, he walked drunkenly to his station. Passing the entrance, the town was starting to wake. Oakwheel, embroiled beyond the wooden gate, was a lesser town, safeguarding small, erecting wooden households, workshops, 2 inns, a chapel, and a tavern, nestled in the pockets of a lord's kingdom. Vintners were popular here. Assorted wines were hard to come by, so they sold them at a hefty cost. Most taverns make spirit a much affordable price common in Nora. The dousing heat quenched him. Villagers prowled the town, buying and selling assorted goods. Streets were busy. Kids, guided by mothers, were going to attend the newly built schools. Confronted by wondering residents, Crod was watched with awe and question. His clothes were different, the way about him. Everything seemed conflicting compared to the townsfolk. Though his last visit was brief when strolling to the gates, he lingered enough to attract curious commoners. Basking below the waning stars, each stride along the way further frustrated him. A manifestation of demise and woe loomed in his stride. Lush temporal flowers bloomed within the clearing. Spring had reached its final stage. Whiffs of rot made squeeze his round nose. Grave diggers nearby were shoveling up maggot-infested carcasses. The soil of the earth was eating the old and long forgotten. The droves of people left in the dirt weren't given a proper burial. Blacksmiths smashed hammers on blanks for customers. Peddlers yelled sail when the rich crossed their allies. Chimneys coughed, burning wood filling the sky. Robed priests holding effigies of Elise passed Crod along the walkway, praying to their god. Bells from the church tolled across Oakwheel, ending the congregation at church. Almost there! His pace quickened till he was at the door. A tug at the back turned him around. Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir." Behind Crod was a small child, prowling the town, twitting his fingers, eager to talk. Crod didn't hear because he couldn't muster the strength to speak louder. When opening the door, he said, You're a pilgrim, aren't you? Could you help me?" Crod turned his bushy brows, eyeing the boy in a drowsy state. "What do you want?" Ira, overwhelmed by the chance, stuttered. Looking at his burned hand, feeling a push to continue, "I've dirtied my hands enough today." Parting the boy, Crod saw the bar and its residents. Places like these usually house tens of villagers. Today there was an exception. Cranky slurs directed at the chef made embarrassed the establishment. Newly broiled, crisping seasoned steaks smelled captivating. "Meat is raw! I wanted it cooked!" Husky and massive, her smack rumbled the table. So fat her dress reached to the floorboards, hiding her flab. "Listen to my wife, this is no good." Bearded and plumb, his fingers pointed at the plate. You could tell there was no pink, but disobeying a noble leads to the dungeon. Yelling to draw a crowd, "Make us another and cook it! I want the meat charred!" Wenches took their plates and spoke to the chef. Girls mucked about, arms carrying food. Sitting alone, Ira was adjacent from the husband and bride who dressed in wealthy attire, fat and gorging by their manservant, who appeared appallingly thin. The boy foamed from the mouth, and so did the manservant. The drooling boy was greeted by a wench, who placed a plate of meat at his table. Crod sat to the front, next to a muscular fellow that was bald and shirtless. When one of the wenches delivered the charred steak, the tubby wife gorged upon it. Her chubby face widened. "There we are." She returned to her post behind the bar table. "What would you like, hun?" She was sweaty and worn, possibly from the strenuous work, but her eye was swollen. She wore a tacky garment like the rest of her co-workers. Her attitude was kind, sharpened over the years of service. "2 ice waters." A coin-filled pouch dropped on the table. Staring orbs latched onto the pouch. "Your hand!" gasped the girl, examining his burned hand covered in blood. "Something wrong?" She looked at him with pity, reassuring her, "It's nothing." "Hey, servant girl, we need more ale," barked the heavy noble. "Right away." She gave Crod 2 glass tankards of water and hastily sprinted to the rowdy guests of honor. Crod placed his burned hand in one cup. Showing off his brute muscles, the man next to Crod flexed. He was uninterested, the bald man continued. Brawn indented his skin. Intimidated, are you? No, he was more tired, really. His tightened tummy stuck out. Confident are we, elder? The glass was half full. Crod took gulps. Say, have you heard of the new people coming out of the locked city? The great utopia? The glass was half empty. You look like one of those teachers that came by today, but you don't dress exactly to their style. Maybe you're from elsewhere. The glass neared its end. Man of few, huh? Droplets remained. Competing in dominance, sparking distress in ladies and rich to boot, call me impressed. However, that wench is mine, so get your own whore. Crod's mouth unwillingly moved. Is that your boy sitting there?
Yes, that little thief is. What of it?
He told me that you beat your wife and abandoned him outside. What's that? Overhearing the conversation, the boy stood and tried to flee, only to be seen by his father in flustered rage, making him pause in a loop of indecision. The shirtless brute got up, lifting the boy off the stiff flooring. Do you want to die? No. He gawped at Crod, squealing and shivering. Crod was irritated by the noise. The girl who served him earlier came running. Stop it, Harvey, don't hurt him. She ran to her son, trying to pull him away from her husband's grasp. She was then smacked, kneeling to her aggressor. Stay out of it, Rosie. Our child is going to learn his first lesson. Weaklings should be put in their place. Ira thinks to rat me out to those heretics. Ah! You shouldn't be here, Ira. Didn't I tell you to leave? Hervey shook his son to make him understand he meant it. Wasting time making poems and singing. Without any hesitation, Crod said, drop him. Dropping him, Harvey towered over Crod, trying to intimidate him. I did it. Now are you going to fight me, old man? I don't fight. I go with the intent to kill. Crod punched Harvey's mouth with his glassed hand, shattering it. The force knocked him down jaw first onto the hardwood, stealing rotten teeth from his gums. Crod again looked at his fist in suspension, slowly bleeding from the cuts it received. Everyone witnessed the spectacle, deciding not to intervene, because if it was true that the stranger was indeed a pilgrim, it would be best not to break the boundary law. Ira frantically asked, Why did you do that? Crod came to Ira, wiping away the weep, smearing his face with blood, leaving in a rush without a word. But there he was, still touching Iris's face, holding onto it with a look that was nothing but death. I want to kill you. Here, me. I won't be led like this any longer. I want to kill you. Kill your family. Kill everyone in this room, and then myself. You hear me? As he was ready to kill the boy, all the whispers in his ear told him, No! No! The fatty nobleman got up, went to Harvey, and kicked him. Someone get this ass up and tell the guards. Crod let go of the boy and bolted. When the bellies of the rich lords were full, they left without thanks or appraisal of the fine meal. Thirsty wanderers such as Crod disappear precisely at the opportune time. For what abode is here for the ones who dwell in the past? For in this case he watches, observing the people moving freely, unaware of danger. His origins are hidden among the legions of death within him. This wanderer is long forgotten and no longer remembered. As he pressed onward out of town, he plucked the glass out of his hand, holding it on his chest, feeling the source of life he had been given. So ends Chapter 1.